Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place. Okay, we've got a great show for you today. This one's going to be a very unique one. We've never talked about this topic. We're talking about a marketplace for loan syndication on the institutional level. Definitely outside of my pay grade, but I think we had a great conversation and got a chance to go into this one. We've got Annelise Osborne. She's the head of strategy for a company called Metechi, and they are off to a fast start. They're basically trying to make it easy for your regional banks, your small banks, credit unions to sell their loans to, free up some liquidity to institutional buyers and even family offices. And we get into, hey, what is this platform? Why does a small bank need access to a syndication desk? What's the old way of doing it? And why is this going to change that? Why is this going to move the industry forward? And how does that help both the small bank as well as the institutional? And my favorite is we got to put together a small little example, a hypothetical scenario, if you will, of a little bank up in Butte, Montana, one of my favorite places to visit. We also talk about going to market strategy for something like this. This is a unique product in a very specific niche market, very high up end. So how do you go to market with something like this? And, I'll be honest, Annelise hit me with an answer I didn't see coming. She talked about leveraging influencers. It's not the Instagram influencers you might be thinking of, but I think it's important to hear this one because this is actually just a very common sense strategy as far as I'm concerned. But it can be very efficient and very effective. And last but not least, we do touch on raising capital. I know everyone's favorite topic. We get into raising capital, some of the philosophy, and how Metechi is doing this, especially in a market that's a little bit unpredictable right now. So kick back. I think you'll enjoy this one. Listen in. Well, hey, Annelise, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that you have me on.
Yeah, well, this is going to be fun. I'm excited because this is your very first podcast.
I listen to podcasts a lot, but this is the very first podcast that I am doing, yes.
Yeah, well, this is, one of these days, I'm going to make a roster to show Tech Nest who's been on their very first podcast coming on Tech Nest because we're early. We spot the best talent before everyone else is what I like to think. So
where we all premiere.
Well, hey, let's get this started correctly. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Annelise Osborne. I have worked in commercial real estate finance for a long time. I started my career with commercial real estate with Jones Lang and W.P. Carey. After business school, I went into the emergence of CMBS with Moody's. I spent 12 years working at Moody's in commercial real estate finance. It was a great experience of time watching the market change, kind of from the beginning days to the multiple different structures through the financial crisis, trying to figure out what the right risk and the right ratings were. And then I spent some time after I left working with different hedge funds, private equities, working on kind of startup different business lines. And so that launched me that into technology. So I worked on a few different boards, and the boards were working with data startup like CRE companies, or one was I was asked to do a blockchain regulatory task force. So with regulation with the ICOs, and that actually really pushed me into recognizing all that technology has to offer, and finance and CRE is a little bit behind in what's actually being done. So how can we upgrade the processes that are in place and just make them more efficient? And that kind of moved me into, so the first startup we launched was in blockchain, working with trying to do loans in blockchain. And I think it was probably a little before its time in the sense that institutional adoption is a little slow. But I think there's loads of ways that we can continue to kind of expand capital markets and upgrade finance. And I met these two wonderful people that founded Metechi. Metechi is a commercial real estate syndicated loan platform. Mm-hmm. So Zohar and Karen Goshen founded this company. And the idea, and what it's putting together, it's a marketplace for commercial real estate loans. Mm-hmm. And the idea right now, the way loans are done is that usually it's kind of who knows who. If you're selling them, there's not an open marketplace for it. And so what we're trying to do is kind of open capital markets a little bit more, make loans more liquid, but give more banks and more players and more funds the opportunity to buy commercial real estate, loans on commercial real estate.
Got it. Okay, so plenty to jump in there. Obviously, you've had some fun experiences. I can only imagine what it was like for you on the last downturn. That must have been an exciting time from your perspective. I was working at a home builder.
Wow.
So I worked at a home builder for 06 to 08 and then went to college and got to college and realized I learned nothing in comparison to actually working.
How was it? Where were you building homes?
Outside of Philly. So our the recession hit us July 2006. We went from 60 homes a month to 15 in delivering. And we had 9 years of leveraged backlogged land. That was, all that cash was tied up in escrow accounts. And then we had all the reappraisals that hit everyone. So then we had to dump cash into not having the loans called or losing the land. And, the whole compound effect. It was a lot of fun. But yours was, obviously you've been in this game for quite a little while now, and you've been able to see it from very high up and then also down in the weeds. So I want to unpack that because I think your background probably has you in a very unique position to lead a product such as Metechi because you have the perspective. You've been on the technology front and seeing the light, if you will. Like, hey, there is a better way. And then you've also done it the other way where maybe it wasn't the best. So, and you already walked me through the journey of, kind of how you came to Metechi. But let's just start with this. Why is now the time for Metechi to take off, to build and get out there?
Sure. So the founders are Israeli, and they had started with their friends buying loans for getting commercial real estate exposure in the US, and the risk return was really off. And then the recognition that it's really hard to actually find loans for sale that make sense from a risk perspective. How do you do that? If you're not in the in crowd, if you're not in that club of the cool kids, how do you find opportunities? And so that was really how
at the golf course, right?
In business school, I went to business school. I've got some great connections through business school. But if you're not if you don't have that, how do you play? And you're not at one of the name. There's some fantastic syndication desks out there. You've got Citi, Golden. There's a lot of players. But what if you're a bank, in Montana or California that wants some more exposure and then you don't have that access? Yeah. And so it was seeded out of D.E. Shaw's accelerator. And that was in December, I guess that was in January of 2018. We've just started loans at the end of last year. We launched loans off the platform. So we have loans on the platform. We're closing our first loans now. Mm-hmm. But I guess why now is there's no one else doing this. So there are brokers out there that have broker platforms. We're not brokers. We're a marketplace. So our fee basis is pennies in compared to what the brokers have to offer. Through the last downturn, there's an auction site that did really well, but they are brokers also. But we're really just doing, I saw you just had Airbnb on, right? So we're looking at being in essence an Airbnb for loans. So we're really just, it depends who I talk to, if it's a tech company or if it's just a commercial real estate company. If I talk to the loan originators or the banks, I don't think they want to know that all the tech that's involved in it, but they want to recognize how it benefits them.
Yeah, so you can quickly find a buyer.
Yeah, so how it benefits them is, in essence, we're giving them a syndication desk. We have 250 different companies, banks on the platform right now that can buy or register to buy. And we have a number of different, we're definitely early, but we're growing. A number of different banks. We've just signed a large insurance company that are putting loans on the platform. So what we're bringing them is we're giving them a syndication desk so they can access all these people that they might not have known before. But also, our fee is based off success. So if you place on our platform, fantastic, and we get paid for that. But if you don't place, if you follow your normal syndication route, it doesn't cost you anything. If you put something on our platform and it doesn't actually, isn't filled from our platform, then there's no cost to you. So it's almost like this fantastic way to market your loans without committing to it.
It sounds like because I've never marketed a loan before. It does sound like fun though.
It's calling people usually.
It sounds like that could be a tough thing to promote. So here, someone comes along and says, hey, we've got a platform and we have buyers for what you need to sell. And there's no downside in you listing your loan for our buyers. And only if you sell through our platform, is there any sort of, you call it a commission, a fee? What do you call that?
Our fee.
Just a fee. Okay. So there's no downside to that. And this is probably key because, building a two-sided marketplace is always challenging. How do you get both sides? Because, the buyers need something to buy and the sellers need someone to buy. And how do you get both at the same time? And sometimes that can be really difficult. But it sounds like you've got a little bit of an edge here in building a marketplace in that it's already something that's maybe difficult to sell to the right people.
Yeah. One way that you're making illiquid assets more liquid, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a loan on your books and you can't sell, that's hard, that's hard because that's not liquid. But so I guess there's two things in us building, right? So when we're starting out, we really need to build credibility. Mm-hmm. So the founders are very credible. Zohar headed what in essence was Israel's SEC. And he's a Columbia law professor, and wow. Karen's a lawyer as well, and done a number of different impressive things in her career. And it was founded by D.E. Shaw. So all that really helps. And the players that we have on the platform we check through to make sure they're institutional. This is not a crowdfunding platform. It's really kind of for the banks to use to sell and the funds.
Yeah.
So I think that's one, and that works with adoption because I think those two things are really huge and actually making this happen. But we've got really interested. Some of the players, when I first started, I thought it would be second and third tier banks that really gave them the opportunity, credit unions for access. But we're also finding some of the large players are really interested in getting in the game with us as well. So that's wonderful to hear. So I think in a year we'll be in a very different place than we are now because right now we're closing our first loans.
That's fantastic. And obviously, right now, it's a little bit difficult to get everyone together for the cocktail party or the conference or go to the golf course. So you still need a way to get it done. And while the phone exists and of course Zoom exists, it's not always easy to get someone's attention or get them on to talk through with the product. And now you have something that if you can just get it in front of either the right buyers or the right sellers for them to think through of, hey, this could be something that we could leverage. You kind of stumbled into what might be a good time for people to think about taking this process online and the advantages to it.
Well, there's a couple things there. One, how do you build a business in this environment? But as a startup, there's always things to do. Like that's never, we're always just short on time, right? And so, the normal way of going to the conferences and sharing what we're doing and speaking to large crowds of people, I think is limited. But in the same sense, the opportunity there is that we can directly contact. So I'm on the phone all the time. And, I probably speak 25% to people I already know, pitching, like explaining to them this new concept that we're doing. And then probably, 75% of the time to people that I don't know. So some of them have already heard of Metechi, some of them haven't. So it's more of a direct approach for sure, which helps to try to lead them in and sign them on because it's something new. But then too, I also think there's opportunities in a down cycle that are going to come across that definitely came across last time. I think the last recession was different in the sense that it was financially led and then economics fell behind it. I think this is more of an economic issue that is now leading to a financial issue. So it's not that the lending markets are locked because of, of what happened back in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
But that's going to lead to a lot of loan sales. So I think people will have to rebalance their portfolios. We'll have non-performing loans. We originally started our business in A notes, which is a senior note for commercial real estate.
Okay.
And now we have just expanded it to include non-performing loans. There's a huge demand for distress loans right now because there's a lot of money out there that wants to buy them. There's not a lot of loans that are distressed yet, or they're starting to be distressed. So the price hasn't really adjusted because it's only the beginning. Because the crisis, we've only really been here for 5 weeks. I mean, it's not been a long time.
It's just hitting fast.
It is hitting fast, but we can't even be in a recession until we have two quarters of negative growth. So,
Right. Correct.
but yes, so I think so one, kind of how we reach out to people is more direct. Two, the opportunities to expand into different businesses already, kind of for NPLs, and then also three, I think the way that we're working is a little different. So we're very efficient from home. It turns out the fact that large companies can go remote and still continue to work, because finance is essential. So we need to keep the financial markets open.
Yeah.
And with that, how do we find more efficient ways to transact in business? So I think there's some benefits that have come with that too. So I'm a big believer that we'll have, so like technology will play so much more kind of step by step. So like digital mortgages, I think there'll be, Cuomo signed early on, the notarization, the online remote notarization, which is a state by state led thing that is super important. So I think this is also building the way for us to become more digital in our day-to-day business. So yeah, I think those are three different ways that the current environment has kind of changed how we're approaching business and where we're going.
Yeah. You mentioned online notarization. Notarize, which is an online notary. Pat Kinsell's the CEO of that company. And we had him on the podcast, I like to say, early, like way before everybody else knew who Notarize was. I'm not saying it's coincidental. He was on TechNest and their business is blowing up.
Yeah.
But, seems to correlate to me.
Yeah. But I think that's really important. We need that, because I really do believe that we'll have digital mortgages first in the residential and then later in CRE. Don't tell CRE people that, but we'll get there.
But it's all making sense. It's like, wait a minute. So we can do this without having to go into an office. We can do notarization over, internet connection. Like we can. I mean, yes, we can do these things. And getting over the hump, for some people to adopt it is now at a crossroads of, if we don't, no business happens. Before it might have been like, well, if I do, what if I don't like it? And there was downside to do it. Now the downside is like no upside, is your business doesn't function and your business doesn't move forward, and it's forcing adoption, which I think is fantastic. It's good. It's going to really drive adoption for good solutions.
I agree. I feel like things stop with the general counsel and risk. Like what's the risk for the company? And now it's switched that they need that there has to be transactions happening.
Yeah. So all right, let's go real practical here. I'm gonna play the role of a local bank, right? Okay. So I'm a good local bank in one of my favorite places to stop every time I'm road tripping, Butte, Montana, a half dead town. If you're not familiar with it, are you familiar with Butte at all?
I've never been to Butte, Montana, but I have been to Montana.
Okay, so like Butte had the capacity for like, I don't know, I think like 200,000 residents, and I think only like 40,000 live there now.
So it's like a Detroit on a smaller scale.
Oh yeah, it's really sad, but it's a beautiful little mountain town. It's got some cool stuff around it. There's this little soft serve ice cream shop that I stop and get my dog an ice cream cone every time we go through. Okay, so I've got this little Butte bank. I want to get rid of this loan. I want to get some liquidity because I'm just hunkering down for the next few years. And I come across the Metechi website. What do I do to get my loan listed?
So you can reach out if you go on metechi.com, which is metechi.com. You can click through. There's actually people's names that you can just click on and have someone to immediately email. I believe that it's email through there. And then just have a conversation. We have it's easy. We have a general agreement that we sign, and then you can actually upload everything to the site yourselves. So we're not broker dealers. We are not. We check to make sure that the players, from our perspective, are real players. Mm-hmm. And then we could load. Then they're loaded up to the platform. Mm-hmm. Your loan is loaded up to the platform. It automatically goes out if it matches the criteria, because we have automation is in there. So, and it goes out to the people that match the criteria that are looking for that loan, and it says you have so many matches. Mm-hmm. They get notified as well, mm-hmm. and then they can look onto your site. The first picture of what people see is a teaser. It doesn't have, because concerns of confidential information. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the address. It has generals. Yeah. And so if you're interested, you click on that. And then if I'm the bank, I can say, oh, look who clicked on it. They're someone from this bank. Yep. Or this fund. And they say, I'm going to give them access. So then you give them the access to the next level, which is really kind of the specifics, what you would call like the asset summary report, really, like information is like a deal memo sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have a data room. And then they can request access to the data room, which would be things like the appraisal, like the loan note, different. And then they can do their due diligence. And they can submit through, there's a chat room. You can actually talk, the bankers and sellers, the buyers and sellers can talk to each other on the chat room.
Do they see each other's names, or are they anonymous still at this point?
Well, there's two, how it initially was set up and how we've initially launched it, it's names. So you can put your profile up there, so your picture's there.
That's good.
And so you know who you're dealing with. Now we all just added a confidential function to it as well, because of with non-performing loans coming up, people might be concerned about reputational risk if they're putting up NPLs.
Yep.
And so what we have there is that can be confidential. But generally when you're going to sign and agree, we don't do that on our platform. We're doing the introduction. So the deal is structured and done by the buyer and the seller. So your Butte, Montana bank can speak to whomever they choose to speak with that have reached out and matched, provide access to whomever they approve providing access to, and then they can decide and structure the deal with whomever they decide to sell to.
Got it. And there's some minimum requirements, right, of like loan size to get onto the platform.
Well, there is. We're really working from institutions, so we're working with banks. Now, it's changing a little bit with recognizing NPLs, people that have NPLs to sell. There's such a huge demand to buy them. So that we are working with funds as well, which might be a little bit different than, a bank that has $5 billion in assets. A fund might not have that, but they might have non-performing loans, which we recognize we can create a marketplace for that too. So generally we say at least 200 million in assets. The ticket size we're really looking for was about 5 million. And what else was that? So I'm trying to think of our other requirements that we're looking at now, but that's really kind of our rule of thumb. Can we be flexible on it? Sure. Especially recognizing the market. So we're trying to work with the times. We're a startup and we are trying to build adoption and,
I mean, you're setting the general guidelines of, hey, look, this is the right deal for the right buyers. And that way you attract the right buyers to continue bringing in the right sellers. I mean, that back and forth marketplace, and without, defining that, I mean, you can't have something too small on the platform because you're not going to bring in the right buyers, and then it doesn't work.
But I will say we have one bank right now that's just about to put 2 different loans on the platform, and they have a minimum requirement of liquidity for whoever they sell to. These are construction loans. Construction loans come out in draws, so you have to have liquidity requirements. So we can do that as well. So we're flexible, and we can. Then it limits the target audience of participants, the loan buyers. But really, we're creating a platform. So I was saying to the CRE people, we don't bid it as tech, but to the tech people, we have created a tech platform that we can do this. We have automation. We're going to have data, which is one of the big benefits, I think, as we grow, is the data. Right now, it's not transparent for the loan pricing data, right? Because everybody, if you're in Butte, Montana, and you want to price a loan, well, what does that compare to anything else that's priced in Montana? The idea here is once we get bigger, that'll be a bit more transparent, which will then also help the borrowers, because then the borrowers will be paying something market rate as opposed to above market. So that's something from the tech side. We'll have that data. We can automate that. That's going to be, we can use that in different ways as well.
I'd expect a discount on Butte loans versus Bozeman, but Bozeman's cool. It's happening. The town is lively and downtown's cool. And we've stayed in Bozeman as well. I just love road tripping through Montana. We'll avoid that one right now, though.
We don't have any Montana loans yet, but if anyone has any that they'd like to add, we can build out in Montana. It's not really a market that we've covered so far.
There you go. We'll get it. So one thing I love learning about, though, when people are solving unique problems, because I would describe as a unique problem, it typically requires a unique approach for going to market. So what are you doing that's helping drive growth at Metechi?
So there's a few different aspects. One, here on the podcast with you, talking about what we're doing is trying to reach a broader audience. We're limited for our conferences, as we talked about already. So it's kind of hard to reach broad audiences that way outside of press and podcasts. But I think a lot of also is direct communication with people, which is what we're trying to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more people we can actually reach out to and get influencers involved. So there's a number of people I talk to as well that might not have loans, but are influencers in the industry. So if we can get more people talking about what we can do with all of their other people,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's different ways to spread the word. So it's really kind of going out from all different aspects, both from the commercial real estate lending side, the commercial real estate side, the fintech side. And it's really talking to people and pushing it. So we are going to do,
And these influencers are not Instagram influencers, I'm assuming.
no, funny that the like the CRE finance world, not so much. But we want people that talk, right? The people and it's really just talking to friends that, because I've worked in the industry, so I'm just friends who that then talk to their friends or, recognize the benefit. I love getting feedback for what we're doing, to make sure that for the people that are using it or the people that have looked at it, to make sure that we're capturing what we should be capturing or what they think we should be capturing. Mm-hmm. So it's, trying to go about it a number of different ways, but the whole point is let's get our name out there. Let's get product for the site, as in like, let's get loans on the site. Let's get buyers. So without the large advertising budget that hopefully we'll have, and we're going to do a fundraise, ideally our timeline was over the summer.
Oh, okay.
But what we can do there is hire more people, because if we can hire more people, we can go out and get more markets. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to be creative in our current world of how can we reach more people. So I have two great friends who work in two totally different markets that have worked in the commercial real estate finance place for a while, and they know loads of local bankers. And I can't create a relationship with them, the bankers, just in the current environment, but they already have. So they're helping. So, how can we leverage that? So they're actually, assisting on a representative basis. Mm-hmm. Because it's really just how can we reach the most people?
Yeah. I love it. I love the leveraging influencers and thinking from that angle, especially with big organizations. Sometimes it's hard to get to the person who's making the decision, and it's not the true, what used to be described as, well, you got to get past the gatekeeper, and then a gatekeeper makes the introduction to the decision maker. I think it's a lot messier than that now, because there's people who have pull and who have, what you're saying, that influence on, hey, we should take a look at this. I think Slack's a great example of that. The people who choose to upgrade their company to enterprise Slack were not the first at the company who adopted Slack. It was, it was probably the design team, or it was, the marketing or sales team, who then basically said, like, hey, you have to do this because we're using this thing and we need, the next tier up. And you were on the inside. I like to think of it as, I don't know if this is the right analogy, is the Trojan horse strategy. And it's a little bit not exactly the Trojan horse strategy, but you got to get somebody on the inside of the walls to make something happen. So how do you get on the inside? So
Absolutely.
you got to, find somebody on the inside who can then pull on the right strings or say the right things or push on the bruise. I like to think the bruise. Find someone's bruise, right? Just poke on it. Because, hey, you don't know you have a bruise until someone pushes on it. And then you're like, hey, there's a bruise there. So you push on that bruise a little bit so they feel a little bit of pain and seek out a solution. So I think that's cool. And, you don't hear finance, and especially at this level, I don't hear people talking about it as if it's like very cool or advanced or things. I think they're wrong. But when you're using words like finding influencers to drive business, I think that's maybe hopefully reshaping some perception of like, hey, this can be a very cool thing. And there's, different creative ways that you can do business. It doesn't have to be just stuffy, one-to-one at the golf course.
True. And I don't know that the influencers necessarily think of themselves that way, but I think about building a business and it's kind of like missing the startup world and how we grow with kind of because I think commercial real estate finance isn't as technologically advanced, but I think it will get there. And I think it's these little steps that make a big difference.
So are there any particular, are you seeing like any particular trends like geographically that tend to lean, hey, this is interesting, I want to learn more? Or is this something that is just across the board having to introduce, educate in order to earn adoption?
So geographically, we kind of think of the smile states, people talk about them, which is kind of the coast. only because there's larger populations in those places. And I will say the differentiation I'm finding is if you're kind of at a regional bank or a credit union, the people that are working at the credit union or regional bank probably have been less exposed to the technology that has happened, for example, probably in some of the New York hedge funds or debt funds, or even some of the larger banks, or Silicon Valley. So I think it's easier to embrace the idea of tech than there, or platforms or new ways to make business more efficient than it might be at some of the smaller regional banks if they're looking at it as a technology play. Now, if they're looking at it really just as a how can this help me, I think that's a little bit an easier of a sell. So I guess it's how you pitch it to the different players and how kind of, I guess, sophisticated they might be on both technology and lending.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Like if, the people at the banks also haven't been exposed to these things, like there's a little bit of more of a learning curve for them to adopt versus others who I've heard some things or someone else in the area was saying something and okay, this sounds like, if they've heard it from someone else, especially the level of initial trust is going to be higher. Yeah. I totally get that. One of the things I always like to also talk through, because I think this also shows a little bit about like the development of companies, is like, is something that doesn't work, or maybe you guys have tried a certain direction or an angle or a pitch, but especially in the startup world, everyone gets their fair share of, hey, that was a good idea, good try, but that was a failure. Is there anything Metechi tried, like a direction or a product offering that was not the right direction or was a total failure that you can share?
So I do have experiences from other things as well. And I started at Metechi in early March. So it's been interesting that
it's been a fast ride for you.
It's been a fast ride, for sure. But I will say that we approached the large investment banks and sharing what we were doing. And what we found was there was more of a demand to buy us and use us internally than actually partner with us. And some of them already had syndication desks, but it wasn't really what we were going for. Like we're trying to create something we're starting in the US, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to create something for the US market. We're trying to open up capital markets for all sorts of players in debt, and that wasn't solving the problem.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, and obviously, as startups, I mean, only since March, but you'll find more of those that'll come along the way. Things that
I have many from my previous one. Yes,
I get it.
Apparently, is a bad word, but I don't think it's a bad. I kept being told, like, when we'd say "let's pivot," I don't think it's a bad word. I think when you pivot, it's because this didn't work, and let's try it this way. Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with that. It's not. Yeah. You can't be scared of failure. I mean, if you really want to brand it that way, that didn't work. Let's do it. Let's try this.
Yeah. I've always, I don't know who taught me this, but I've always gone with do the right thing and wait to get fired. And I take that and I just apply it to everything, including with all strategies of like, do what you believe the right thing is and see the result. And then you can adjust from there, but you have to do what you believe is the right thing first. And then you can take your learnings.
And be fired. I hadn't heard that. But I get it. You do the best you can, right?
Yeah, you do the right thing and wait to get fired. You did mention that you're looking at fundraising later this year, but obviously that may or may not. It looks like the current environment is impacting that. Are you able to? And I don't know how far into that process you are, but is that something that you're able to speak into? And maybe what's the approach Metechi has taken to raising funds?
Sure. So I mentioned before, D.E. Shaw helped seed us, as did some angel investors. Mm-hmm. And then we're closing our first loans now. We wanted to make sure we had loans closed. They were supposed to close a couple of weeks ago. We were told as of yesterday they really are closing. They just haven't because of its banks, and there's just been a delay. People are very busy with all the small business loans. So it's just been a delay in actually committing the funding. But that once that's done, we can show that we have a viable project, like the product actually works. Yeah. We've also since then signed on, even in this downturn, we've signed on other big players. So that's fantastic that we can show there's more, we're bringing more product in. So we are Obviously we'll go, we'll talk to some VCs. We're talking, right now I'm kind of talking to some strategic partners just in the lending, like in the larger lending space, because I think there's different ways that we can work together, both from an investment perspective and from a product perspective. So we're slowly starting, but it's hard to create new relationships because recognizing that VC funding is very personally driven. It's hard to do that during this time. So I think that's more, and I also recognize everyone's portfolio companies are kind of the priority right now. So I'm not sure how many people are actually writing checks, but we do hope to start that in the coming months, probably. Ideally, we were doing it in June. So, our new normal, whatever that looks like when we can kind of be back in the office and however we do. But we're still having conversations. I've had one last week. I have one this week with different more strategic players than VCs. We'll obviously need VCs to come into price however we work. But we are happy to meet any VCs that are interested in exposure to this space. We've got a great team of people. And really, we're getting a lot of market traction, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, good on you guys for persisting through it. I mean, obviously, it can be a bit of a challenge when some unexpected turbulence hits the entire market. We'll call it turbulence. How's that?
Sure, so true.
But I mean, persisting through it. And obviously, I think that says a lot about, the team and what you're doing, also in the belief in it, and that you're not just going to abandon, we're not going to raise 100 million this week. So let's just call it good. I want to keep moving here. And I think we've, first off, this is just such a unique business. And I hope I'm doing justice in asking the right questions to expose what you're doing and to give people, the view of what it is to have a marketplace for buying and selling loans. Because this is a little bit outside of what I'll probably ever do. And a lot of us, but at the same time, I can see how the trickle down effect into other areas of business and finance that something like this can have. The last thing I wanted to touch on was, if we're taking this process online, ideally, it probably should expedite the process. Like, it should take less time to find a buyer. It should take less time to find a loan to purchase. The process time should be faster. The transparency should be increased. What sort of savings, other than time, can an investor, realize from that? Have you guys looked into that? Like, hey, an investor who uses our platform is likely to save, is there like a amount of money that they save, or is it opportunity cost? That they're not missing that opportunity.
Sure. So I'm a huge believer touching the time first. We can access a lot of potential buyers right off the bat. We're also going through the old process. I'm a huge believer that that will become more digital and more and more will be done online, because right now, generally the banks are using their old process, the legacy process of that. And I think we'll find ways to automate that more, which is great when they get more comfortable with our process. So I think that will definitely, even though we're shortening the time now, I think we'll shorten it even further. But if people are using brokers to sell, like brokers charge 6%, they can, who knows what they're charging, right? They can charge anywhere from 5 to 10% on different loan sales, and we don't have, our fee is nothing anywhere close to that. So you're obviously saving a chunk of money from not using a broker coming to our platform.
Because you have a fixed fee on closing loans. Is that why?
We have our fee varies.
Okay.
But it's basis points as opposed to percentages.
Got it.
So it's just a huge chunk, because we're really looking at this as a volume. So we're starting in commercial real estate. We're putting in non-performing loans. We're putting in confidential loans. We just launched this week. We can do auctions if there's a demand for auctions. We've just launched that as well. And then C&I loans. So then we're going to expand to other types of syndicated loans. So our goal is not, since we're not brokering the process and really, hand holding the whole way through or structuring the deal. So we're not a regulated entity because we're a tech marketplace that we're providing. So it's, the fee is a lot lower, which is why we're looking at it kind of really from volume perspective. So that's a huge perspective. Also, all the information is in one place. So if you use our data room, all the data room information is there. We have you have all the chat functions. You have still access to the buyers from previous deals. You also have, there's an asset management function in there too, that if you continue reporting on the loan, that's tracks in there as well. So there's a lot of added benefits that we're not utilizing yet, but we already have in the platform, because right now the platform we're really focused on is being the matching function and closing the first deals.
Got it. Very cool. We're going to move on to the bottom of the show segments here. Probably my favorite part of the show. This is what we call For the Future. For the Future is a segment where I get to ask each guest who comes to the show to give their best predictions based on the following 4 questions. Annelise, are you ready to play?
I'm ready to play.
All right, let's do this.
Can't wait.
Question number 1. What does Metechi look like 1 year from now?
So 1 year from now, hopefully we've closed our Series A. We've been able to hire more salespeople and build out. We're also branching out from just commercial real estate loans, like I said before, to have, the tech is built. We just don't have the loans on the platform yet for our non-performing loans and our C&I loans, commercial industrial loans, and really built that up. So we're hoping to have 1,000 buyers on the platform by then. And I'm not even sure how many, and a number of loan sellers.
Got it. All right. Question number 2, even though we didn't go a lot into prop tech specifically, I got to put you on the spot. What will prop tech as an industry look like a year from now?
Prop tech. So I really think technology is combining with all industries. So it's not even going to be prop tech is just as much, it's really just real estate or property, however you want to look at it. I think that it combines a little bit tighter. So I think things are going to change as well, because as we talked about with what's happening right now with things being more remote, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays into office space, retail, how different technologies have made that more efficient, because obviously there's going to be, right now what's happening with hotels and retail is devastating, as well as, office space and uses for office. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation that comes out of this downturn of finding ways to help solve problems that we're recognizing now. Yeah. And I think it just continues, and the real estate companies have so much technology built into them that prop tech isn't even as much of a sector. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of overlap. You got contech, insurtech, fintech, some call it rental tech. Then you have real estate technology, which some people like to break out from prop tech. But then it's it's a giant Venn diagram of Venn diagrams.
But I also think it's great to have all this innovation. And I think a lot of the innovation, it's hard to start innovation at large shops, right? Because the large shops are focused on what they do, and there's usually more red tape there. So I think a lot of the innovation starts as the smaller prop techs, and then they get, either they grow themselves to large companies that they're not necessarily then a prop tech company, they're, a tech company or real estate company, or they get acquired into the individual shops that are there.
Yep.
So it's exciting. I mean, I think it's fantastic to see all the innovation that's going on and how we're growing and we're making the world more efficient. Got it.
Question number 3, what's one industry trend you think would continue, but you wish would go away?
So I think I have to shout out to my women here. So I don't want to say this is going to continue, because I would like this to change in my positive mindset, but I wish there was more women in prop tech or technology or real estate or finance. And I wish there were more women co-founded companies that were being funded. I mean, I would say, as to the VCs out there, look at your portfolio companies and see where there's women involved. I mentor a number of women, and I just think it's important to have those women see other women involved, just to get more of a diversity of thought and a diversity, across the platform, from all different levels. Because I think that helps build out better products.
Yeah, I talk with my wife about this actually pretty frequently. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's one of the things that I'm focused on. I'm ensuring that the representation on TechNest, not necessarily just equal, 1-to-1, but representing and giving a voice, not just to the standard guy persona. There's a lot of people in the industry, a lot of people making moves, and it's good to help both back women who are in the industry, but also encourage other women to either join the industry as well. So I can appreciate that. I'm sure my wife would love that as well. Question number 4, final for the future. What's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of tech advances?
I would love for paperwork to disappear. So I look at my kids don't know what a payphone is. And so I would love it when my kids are working that they don't know what paperwork is, right? You know, the idea of pushing papers. And,
Yeah.
I had to fill out something for FINRA, and it was like a 24-page document that had to be printed out and checked and turned in, which is crazy. And I know that happens all the time within real estate for getting deals done. I hope so much more goes online. I really do. I think we should become more digital. I think our platform makes that more possible, as well as, like we just talked about, the notarization and what Notarize is doing. So that's what I would love to see go away, is the amount of paperwork we have.
Come on now. Preach it. Love it. I mean, as I sit here taking notes, but
I do too.
But this is a lovely little notebook that just helps me remember things on the spot versus having to fill out forms, and reminds me of the days of being a
remember healthcare went online, right? And so when you go to the doctor's office, you can actually, and thank goodness, because before you used to get papers and papers and papers. Think how many trees.
Oh my gosh. Quick side story.
Yeah.
Because I've got a million of them. There was a time 10 years ago where I had to get surgery on a tooth. And it wasn't good. But the dentist wouldn't see me because he said, you need medical records. I need to know your medical records. And I didn't have them. I was in college or something, or just out of college. No, I was still in college. And I hadn't been to the doctor in years. It's the same story today. But so I was like, okay, well, I booked an appointment at my hometown doctor's office, an hour and a half away. And what they used to do is they would hand you your records after the doctor filled it out, and then you would take it out to the front counter, and then you'd hand it over to the front counter person, and they would give you a receipt of what happened that day and then hand it back to you. And that's how you would take the records from the doctor to the front counter. Well, I called them and asked if I could have my records, and they said you have to have like a 2-week request time, and you got to make all these. You can see where this is going.
Yes.
The doctor handed me the records, and I made a beeline for the door. I just took off and took the whole stack with me.
That's so funny.
I do feel bad about that, maybe. Okay, we're going to move to the last 3 here. Annelise, these are questions more about you, so our listeners get to know you better. Question number 1, what are you reading?
Oh, this is funny. What am I reading? So I discovered Audible not long ago, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I think the last book was Never Split the Difference.
Chris Voss, FBI hostage negotiator.
Yeah, it was interesting. Then I read a lot of biographies. So I read, what did I read? I read Bezos, I read Musk, I read Jobs, I read Knight.
Okay, of those, which is your favorite? And when the Knight one, is that the Shoe Dog Millionaire?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's the Nike.
Yep.
I don't know which one of those was my favorite. I feel like there's so many takeaways from each of them because they're such different personalities and how they approach business and building businesses. But everyone's they've each had their challenges, and it didn't start off easy for any of them. That's another, the idea of being an entrepreneur, people think is glamorous, but it's not really glamorous when you're starting, and you're always going against the grain, I'm finding. So
yeah.
You've got a lot of people that say no, but so I'm not answering your question. I know that. Another one that I like.
No, these are all great suggestions. These are great books.
Range. I like Range as well, because that's something for all of us to think about. It's about Tiger Woods or Roger Federer, right? Which one's better? Is it good for you to have done the same? Is it your 10,000 hours from Gladwell's 10,000 hours? How that makes you an expert, and you've only done that, like Tiger Woods or Roger Federer, who only played tennis in high school, late into high school or college, and he's done all other sports. And so kind of looking at how that translates into the business world. And what it turns out is that, read the book, yes, but it's better to have the range and have done all sorts of things, because you can pull in experiences from what you've done in the past, as opposed to, the one thing very specifically straight through.
So for the people listening, the full title is Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, written by David J. Epstein. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good book.
My tagline on my blog used to be specializing and generalizing. So
you see, there you go. Then you're a winner in this.
This is already up my alley here. I'm down with it. All right, question number 2. Who are you learning from?
where do I learn from? I learn from everyone I meet. I mean, that's what I always say, is that there's always something that I can learn from. I love meeting people. I did start out my life very shy. And so it's not something that I've always had, but I just find people interesting, especially people different from me. And there's always something to learn. I laugh so I have 3 boys. When my youngest first went to preschool, it was so fun to meet parents that did something different than commercial real estate, because my circle was so commercial real estate focused. But it's just so fun to learn people's industries that are different. Also, even, going to conferences and meeting people and hearing what they do and what makes them tick. I mean, there's always a takeaway, even if it's positive or negative, but usually it's positive, and I feel like that's constant. But every day I think it's important to learn. And we have to keep, we talked about this before we started, right? We need to keep learning. Like every day it's not like school stops when you graduate. Right. I think there's a constant curve, and it's great. It's like keeping up with the news and finding different areas that you can learn more about. Like, if you're not learning in your job, take on a new challenge, either within your job or it's time to switch jobs, right? And to find something else. So I think it's really important to keep learning.
Awesome. Last one here. What inspires you?
I have to say, it's great being tied in with the tech world. I would say I'm inspired by kind of heroes, people that use their resources, be it time or money, to help help the world. I mean, look at right now. I think there's all the people on the front lines with nurses and doctors that are every day wake up and go to their jobs and help people. But I also think from the tech side, like innovators, like I was mentioning before, how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, right? And to really make pitch your company and take it all the way through, because there's so many roadblocks in the way that you have to overcome. So I think that's really inspiring as well. So probably those 2.
Got it. Annelise, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show to share about Metechi, your background, the industry of loan syndication, and how that bank in Butte, Montana can finally
be more competitive.
Free up some liquidity there on the books there. Before we go and close out, for those who want to get in touch with you or learn more about Metechi, where do they go? How do they do that?
You can go to metechi.com, which is metechi.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. Email is annelise@metechi.com. Happy to have a conversation, continue the conversation, or help however I can.
Totally. Well, this would be great. Those links will also be below the show notes. You can find it at technest.io. You'll get all the links and information. Anyways, it's been great. I'm sure we'll stay in touch. Keep me in the loop on progress with Metechi when you guys close your round. And as you also close loans on the platform, sounds like you guys are off to a great start. I'm sure that we'll be hearing more about you soon. But until then, let's just keep in touch.
Thanks, Nate. It was great. I appreciate it. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's technest.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.